Hi, Tressa here to answer one of the most frequently asked questions. Why do ECCE Preschools need more funding? Well, first we'll take a look at the income. So we know that income is fixed. We are 100% government funded and prohibited from charging any fees to parents for the delivery of the ECCE session. So the amount is 69,518 for a higher capitation session. That is a session where one of the educators is qualified to VTAC level 7 or 8. So 69,518 is the income. So let's just have a look then at the staff costs. So we have a level 5 educator here working 17.5 hours per week at €13 per hour, and after PRSI and annual leave that comes in at 10,097 per year. And we mentioned this is a higher capitation session, so we have our level 7 educator here on €15.50 per hour, again for 17.5 hours, coming in at 12,039. And the reason it's 17.5 hours as opposed to 15 hours is because, as we know, the educators don't walk into the room with the children. When the children arrive, the lesson has been prepared, the day has been prepared, and everything's ready to go. So that's what that half an hour is for. It's basically preparation. So those are the two educators in the room. And we know that if one of those educators has an unplanned absence, maybe for training purposes or for any other reason such as illness or perhaps a family funeral or anything unexpected like that, COVID of course causing a lot of trouble there, you do need a qualified person available to step in, because otherwise you have to close or partially close your service. So it is vital that you have a third person in the room. But there's also been, as we know, an explosion in non-contact time. So everything from the administration of the business side of things, keeping up the website, the Facebook liaison with parents, policies and procedures, anything to do with inspections or regulation, and general administration day to day, including staff management and recruitment. You do need another person there for that reason as well. So this is the manager, and they are on €16.50 per hour. And after PRSI and annual leave, again at 17.5 hours per week, that comes in at 12,816. So of course you need cleaning staff, you need somebody to look after that side of things, very important, especially after COVID, etc. So this person is on €13 per hour, working just 5 hours per week, so it's an hour a day, and that comes in at 2,885, so just during the term time. After the term time, during the summer, as we all know, there are 3 to 4 weeks of full-time administration to be done. There's everything from ECCE pre-contracting to contracting, receiving the registration and checking the registration and enrolment information for every individual child, going down through to make sure you've got the medical records and everything you might need to run the service effectively and safely, and dealing with PPSNs and all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, registering each ECCE child on the Hive to make sure that they can receive the subsidy. The funding from government. So all of that takes 3 to 4 weeks full time for typically the manager. So that has come in at 2,024. Altogether then your staff costs come to 39,861 in this example. So now let's just have a look at some of the other costs that arise in the service. So you might have, for example, your rent, consumables, utilities, equipment, the cost of the website, insurance, membership fees, of course the Federation, and also Early Childhood Ireland, training costs, a marketing budget, all of that sort of stuff. And that comes in total at 28,378. Now I just want to point out at this stage that it doesn't include, this 28,378 figure does not include any saving towards redundancy costs, any bonus. So if you put a few bob in an envelope at Christmas, banking fees, contingency costs, so if there's a broken boiler, for example, something like that, any overtime or staff cover for training, a staff night out at Christmas, a bunch of flowers if somebody leaves. But most importantly, this figure of 28,378 does not include any incoming sick pay and pension obligations that might arise to the employer on behalf of those staff. So altogether, as I say, that's a cost line item, and I do have a spreadsheet with more details on this. These costs were put together by a panel of providers. Let me know if you need more information on this. So it follows, of course, that income of 69,518 minus your costs being your staff costs 39,861 and your running costs of 28,378 makes your return. So what's left over after your costs are all gone is 1,279. I suppose the difficulty is that costs are increasing quite quickly and that 1,279 is not going to last very long. But setting that aside for a moment, it's important to recognise that the third person I mentioned on the previous slide, that third member of staff, is regularly the owner, the actual owner of the service. So it's fair to set out that the owner would also receive a wage. So let's do that. So we would have the term time hours for that owner manager coming in at 12,816, plus the summer admin that I mentioned coming in at 2,024. So that means that the wage plus that return that we spoke about earlier would be, I suppose, the take home for an owner. And that would be 14,839, the two wage components you see there on the left, plus that return that's left over after all the costs are gone. So that means the take home is around 16,118. The difficulty with that figure is that if instead of 22 children, if the service has 21, the take-home pay reduces by €3,774. Or if you've 20 registered children instead of the 22, the take-home pay for the owner reduces by 6,396. So it's a low wage in the first place. You're unable to cater for contingencies, redundancies, and the other items that aren't mentioned in the costs. But at the end of the day, it can be wiped out very quickly if you are not kept at absolute maximum capacity. So just to make that, I suppose, clear, we'll take a look at what that. So looking at what that capacity can mean, if you've got the 22 children, as we said in our example, the owner might take home 16,118. But if there is one less child registered, the owner would receive at the end of the day 12,344. And if two children are not registered, there's capacity for two extra children in the class. So in your class of 22, you have 20 children. The owner might come out with 9,771. So the owner is, I suppose you could say, blowing in the wind a little bit, absolutely must keep at maximum capacity in order to meet the costs, and the costs are rising. The take-home pay in and of itself, even with 22 children, is too low to sustain the service. And I hope that answers the most frequently asked question, why do ECCE Preschools need more funding? Thanks a lot.